What is up, Packers fans? Welcome into our weekly happy hour right here on the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. You, of course, can find the podcast at Pack a Day Podcast. Usually we have these on Friday. I will be out of town on Friday, however, so trying to get it in a little bit earlier today on a Wednesday. But we've got a lot to discuss. It actually works out perfect anyway because there's no training camp today, so we didn't have our live training camp post-practice show. So today is a great day to get in all of those questions, and I'll try to get to as many as I can over about the course of the next hour or so. We will start with Parker Eves, who came in at 2:02 p.m. today to get his question in. Parker, who has led for corner 4? Well, it's an interesting topic of conversation because what I would say is I'm assuming you're meaning obviously true corner, because to me, Nixon, Hobbs, Valentine, and then Bullard are kind of like your top 4 that are playing that position in some capacity, but we know Bullard is a safety kind of playing that slot corner position. So outside of him, to me, it is Kamal Haddon that is in the lead for that particular spot. Just my observations. I think he's been really good. He's been playing outside corner, but where you're looking right now is sort of that next group of players. You have your top 3, again, Nixon, Hobbs, and Valentine. And after that, Kamal Haddon, Micah Robinson, Kalen King are the ones that are usually making up that next line of players. And then Bo Melton's kind of in that, interesting conversation as well. So I think all 4 of those players probably have the right to get any of those next 2 to 3 spots. But, and maybe an Isaiah Dunn or a Tyron Herring or one of those type of people could get in that conversation, a Gregory Jr. as well. But right now I would put it as Kamal Haddon as the 4. And then I would say probably Kalen King as the 5, Micah Robinson as the 6, and then it kind of goes from there. That's where I would place it at the moment. But as Aaron Nagler would say, a lot of ball game left, and this could still go in a variety of different directions. Joey coming in right away with the super chat. Appreciate you, Joey. Hey, what's been the best part of training camp so far? We could go in a lot of different directions here. It's really been fun to see Matthew Golden live and in person. There's always at training camp, especially early on, going to be an extra emphasis on new free agents and rookies, right? It's new, it's exciting, it's something you haven't had before. So you're always keeping a little bit of an extra eye out for those players. And it's even better when one of those players, especially one that was your first round pick and that you're really excited about, has a really strong start to camp. That has certainly been the case for Matthew Golden. Would argue that it's been the case for Nate Hobbs, although some interesting moments. And he did have a little bit of a tougher day yesterday, but overall, really great start for Nate Hobbs. Isaiah Simmons has had a really nice start as well. So like those have been fun, interesting aspects of camp. Honestly, just getting back out there and having football for me personally, getting to talk to people like Nagler, Wes Hodge, Spoff, Paul Brettel, Pete Doherty, etc., and just getting out there and kind of talking ball every single day has been a blast. But it's just all of it, seeing the guys play, the ups, the downs, the intensity, the physicality, the camaraderie, all of it. It's amazing. It's just football. It's back. There's nothing quite like it. And to me, just the overarching feel of that is probably what I've been most enjoying so far. All right, Parker had another question. Who is more likely to take the next step, LVN or Musgrave? I would put this squarely in the LVN category so far. LVN's actually shown some pretty good signs. I know a lot of other people have maybe kept a little bit of a closer eye on LVN than I have. I haven't specifically seen, I've seen a couple plays from LVN, don't get me wrong, but I haven't been keeping an extra eye on him or anything like that. I know if you kind of read the daily articles from guys like Bill Huber, Paul Brettel, etc., there have been multiple mentions of LVN's improvement, which is great. Like I said the other day, I'll try to do a little bit better job of kind of keeping a closer eye on him because I do think he's one of those players that's on a fulcrum that could, swing the season one way or the other, dependent upon his play. But we've definitely seen some signs from LVN. Musgrave, not really. I do think that when he gets the ball in his hands, that he is slowed down a little bit in a good way, meaning the game isn't seeming quite as fast to him. You're not seeing the stumbles or things like that. But we haven't seen a ton of involvement in him or with him in the offense so far. So that's something that they still need to continue to figure out ways to get him a little bit more involved. And for Luke Musgrave, he's just got to find a way to get open and to basically force some of those plays. So I would definitely put this squarely in the LVN category so far. Dennis, thank you for the super chat as well. Do you think Nazir was overlooked by Georgia in the NFL due to narcolepsy, bad look in meetings? I'll be totally transparent, Dennis. I do not know how much that played a factor in the entire situation. I do know about it. I think there's been multiple, reports and articles that have been out there talking about it. I do feel for anyone that has anything like that, whether it's that type of ailment or anything else, people have to deal with a lot of crap, and certainly narcolepsy is not a fun one that I'm sure Nazir Stackhouse has had to sort of figure out and deal with. Hopefully the Packers and Nazir can find a way to kind of navigate that moving forward. To me, though, what I can say about this, Dennis, is that I think there's a variety of reasons that Nazir got maybe overlooked a little bit. I think there's three big ones. I think one, he's coming out of the University of Georgia, which you might be like, that's, not intuitive. Usually if you're at Georgia, you've got more eyes on you, which is true. But I think people are used to seeing the Devontae Wyatts and the Jalen Carters and the, Jordan Davises and those sort of players that these are big, almost larger than life prospects. And sometimes if you're just a Nazir Stackhouse or a Warren Brinson, you kind of go a little bit under the radar a little bit more when you've got a defense stacked with first round picks. A lot of times, if you're not one of those guys, it's kind of easy to overlook them a little bit more. I also think that in this particular defensive tackle class, I think Brinson in the right class could have easily been a fourth rounder. I think Stackhouse in the right class easily could have been like a fifth rounder, but there were so many quality defensive tackles in this last draft class that I think he got overlooked a little bit because of that as well. And then the last thing is we are seeing some of these teams at times, not always, not all teams, but go away from kind of the 330 pound plus defensive tackle in going more for somebody that can stop the run maybe at 300, 310 and still have the ability to kind of hold up at the point of attack, but maybe has a little bit more pass rush juice than what a Nazir Stackhouse might have. So I think those are a couple of reasons why he might have got overlooked. Maybe the narcolepsy played a factor in that as well, but he's been off to a fantastic start at camp, and maybe Green Bay found a little bit of a diamond in the rough with finding him as a undrafted free agent. All right, John, if Elgton plays well, he won't be cut. And if he is, he will be fine, in my opinion. He may be playing center for the Packers, but teams know he can play guard as well. Yeah, and I think that probably is a little bit to where this kind of ended up for Elgton, knowing that he didn't have a lot of, or really anything to stand on over the course of these past, few weeks from a contract situation. He's got 2 years left on the deal. To your point, he's already under contract for the largest year of his deal from like how much money he's making for next year. If he plays really well, he's got the opportunity just to earn that. If he plays amazing, Green Bay might say like, hey, we want to keep you, but not on that deal. Let's extend you. And he could even potentially get more money. And to your point, if Green Bay is just like, yeah, we like you, but we don't want to pay you that much, he could get released and he probably gets a really good deal in the open market, to your point, John, as a guard and probably not a center. Or in this case, the center probably gives him even more versatility that more teams are interested in him, because it's not just a team that might need a guard, a team that needs a center could be interested as well. So I think this is ultimately going to be a good thing for Elgton. Hopefully he just plays amazing. He and Green Bay want to, continue to work together next year, and he can continue to have a great career as a Green Bay Packer. All right, John, what packages do you think get Simmons on the field? Maybe base versus 12 for teams with good receiving tight ends? Maybe. But I think he primarily, this is tough because his primary usage would be as a nickel linebacker, right? Two linebackers on the field, but I don't think Quay or Cooper are coming off the field. So you've got to be a little bit more creative with that. I could see maybe some 3-3-5 where you maybe get, two edge rushers, meaning like Gary and LVN on the edge, go with maybe a Kenny Clark at nose tackle, your normal 5 defensive backs. And then you've got Quay Simmons and Cooper all on the field together at depth. Any of them can blitz. Any of them can rush. You could put Simmons and Quay as your almost like outside linebackers. You could bring them as pressure guys, or you could drop them into coverage. You still have Simmons could spy. He could go in zone. You could do some fun stuff with that. I do think you could use him some as a 4-3. And as I talked about yesterday, getting him on the field has some potential to be really fun because he's been used as a big nickel, meaning as a safety, as like a Javon Bullard type big nickel in the slot before. So if he's on the field in like a 4-3, man, you can pretty easily morph that into a 3-4, a 4-3, or a nickel defense, depending on how you utilize and line up Isaiah Simmons, and he's capable of doing some of that stuff. So I think for me, kind of one step at a time, let's see what he is, kind of capable of and what he can do in some limited packages here and there. But if it is so good that it demands more opportunities, there are absolutely ways to get him on the field. And special teams should be another one of those ways that he has the potential to make a ton of impact with Rich Bisaccia's group. In Zach Tom's deal, he has per game roster bonuses. Does he still earn those for games where he is injured? No. So that is the whole thing, is that you have to be able to play in the game in order to get those per game roster bonuses. So the salary cap way of, figuring that out is a little bit unique, which we don't need to get into. No, usually it is for games played or games started or those sort of things, or having to be on the active roster. But no, if he does not play in the game, generally you do not get your per game roster bonus. When was the last time the Packers had a Trey Hendrickson-esque standoff with a contract? I know Love had his 3 days of missed and Devontae, but he got traded before the draft. Aaron Rodgers probably would be the one where Aaron demanded a trade and they didn't do it. They said, nope, sorry, we'll trade for Randall Cobb instead, and that'll make you happy. To this day, still probably one of the weirdest circumstances that I've ever covered or just even been a part of in the NFL, where guy demands a trade, clearly not happy. They say no. He says, he'll come back. They figure out terms of him coming back, get him on a new contract. They trade for Randall Cobb. And then Goody doesn't even do the GM thing of like, yep, we're really excited to get Randall Cobb back. We think he's going to fit great in the team. He literally says Randall Cobb would not be here if Aaron didn't demand him to be here, which is, again, remarkable. And then that's not even the crazy part. The crazy part to this day for me is Aaron comes back, does that like hour-long press conference, that hour-long airing of grievances, says all the things that he's upset about at a Packers podium, says all the things that upset him about the Green Bay Packers and why he was upset. And it was almost like that was all he needed. He just needed to get it out. That 5 minutes later from that, maybe not 5, but probably 15 minutes later, 20 minutes, whatever it was, out on the practice field, dude was a kid in a candy store. Dude was the happiest guy on earth. And if you didn't know what happened, you would have just no idea. You thought that he was so happy being a Green Bay Packer and excited to be out there with his teammates. Is like all he needed to do was air his grievances and he was good to go. It was real. It's to this day one of the more remarkable things that I've ever experienced. John says, I really like the intensity we keep hearing about. Packers can't afford a slow start given their tough schedule. I think they'll be ready to go, unlike some past years. Fingers crossed that's the case, John. I think that's what everyone's hoping for. The best teams in the NFL tend to be very disciplined. How was the overall discipline of the team last year? And do you think it can become one of the least penalized teams this season? I'd have to go back and look at it from like a, penalized standpoint of where they were. I actually think if you run a big statistical analysis, the teams that are most penalized, it actually doesn't have a whole, like a massive effect on winning. Bizarrely, like it's not one of those key indicators like turnovers are or anything like that. I do think you have to have a great attention to detail. So it just depends. It depends on what those penalties are for. We just heard from John that he wants a more physical aggressive team. Well, sometimes those physical aggressive teams can lead to, some more personal foul penalties or some things like that. And sometimes that's okay. Sometimes as a defense, you might be a little bit more grabby and get some more pass interference calls, but they know that they can't call that on every single play. So they might get away a little bit more with that through the course of the season too. So I don't think there's a perfect formula there, but I do think that this team has the ability to be a team that has great attention to detail and that has that discipline. It's just going to be up to them to actually go out and prove it this year and just show that growth. They were the youngest team in football the last 2 years. I don't know where it's going to come out this year when they actually make the final roster. My guess is they're one of the 5 youngest teams at absolute worst. And I do think there's still going to be some growing pains, but I just want to see growth in that regard would be kind of my final comment there. Joey has been a member for 19 months. That's incredible, Joey. Thank you so much. When will it be safe to Giddy over Golden? Thanks for what you do, Andy. Yeah, I mean, just regular season production, right? When you start seeing it week in and week out and feel confident that he's that guy. Training camp is awesome. Preseason would be fun too, but it takes real life games against some of the best corners in the league to really show that you can go out, and then you have to do it consistently. So it takes time. Like that's the only thing you can do. I think you should be excited about Matthew Golden already. You really should. But to be like giddy to the point of, yep, he's one of the top 20, top 15, wherever that, line is for best receiver, that just is a go out and prove it sort of thing. So it's going to take a little bit of time, but you should be very excited from what he's shown so far. Here's the thing. We have a kicker who hasn't missed, 2 Pro Bowl returners, and an Isaiah Simmons. We have a Hulk on special teams. I'm usually the voice of moderation, but just saying, double firework emoji. R.R. Smith, I am hopeful, very hopeful, that this can be a special teams that holds its own at the very worst. There's no reason they shouldn't be. They have Keyshawn Nixon as a kick returner, McCole Hardman potentially as a punt returner. They've got good gunners, jammers, flyers, all of it, right? They've got their kicker. They've got a really good punter. They've got a long snapper coming back for his 3rd season in Green Bay. They've got some really talented specialists, guys like Bo Melton, Christian Welch, Zane Anderson, Isaiah Simmons. We can go on, but they have the pieces. It is time to see this special teams go out and be a top 15 special teams in the league. There is no reason whatsoever that they shouldn't be able to do that. All right. From Smiling Beagle, and thank you for the super chat, by the way. Appreciate that a ton. Smiling Beagle, I know Golden has looked the part so far. Has any other rookie caught your eye at practice? Barron Sorrell is off to a nice start, and we heard some great comments from Matt LaFleur the other day. I just think he looks really solid. I don't think there's been anything sort of spectacular so far from him. But I do think he has looked the part, and again, has just really looked solid in everything that he's done at defensive end. I think we're starting to see more and more from Savion Williams, but of course he's had a couple injuries up until this point. Belton, it's been tough to tell. I haven't got a great look at him. Colin Oliver's been hurt. Micah Robinson's had some good and some bad, some good pass breakups, but a couple, pass interference or some completions against him here and there. So yeah, John Williams has been hurt as well, but definitely Matthew Golden leading the way when it comes to the rookie class so far. For game film, coaches have all 22 camera angles that they can see pretty much everything. Do you know what they have for practice film? The social media posts are a low angle. Can't see much. Same thing. They have all 22 for practice as well. So they have everything that you would have in a game. They probably have a little bit more, but both end zone angles, sideline view, so that they can get the full view of everything that's going on in practice, just like they would in a game. Is Savion Williams getting any reps with Love and team drills? Yes. Savion Williams has worked with the ones on numerous occasions already. Just has to stay out there, right? An unknown injury at last practice and a concussion before that. But when he's been out there, he has had opportunities with the ones. Absolutely. I'll give Lloyd my groin if needs it. Let's hope that's not the case, Matt, for both of you guys, that, Marshawn can get better sooner rather than later. And you don't have to go through any additional pain there. Matt LaFleur had high praise for Sorrell. What have you seen from him? Yep, we just talked about him. ESPN revisited last year's first round, gave Morgan a D+, close to the worst grade they gave, cited impact and upside. Seem harsh for a dude who has been injured. Thoughts? Yeah, it's just been the status quo for Jordan Morgan so far. People, myself included, weren't in love with the pick. And I just want to be very clear here one more time. I had him as like a early to mid second grade. So this is not like some, oh my God, I can't believe they took him. And he was easily within like my top 2 or 3 guys that I thought that they would take on that spot. So it wasn't this surprising pick. I do 1 billion% believe that if they didn't take him there, he was going within like the next 3 or 4 picks. No question about it. So yeah, I think this has just been the way that it was, where people weren't super thrilled with the pick when it got made. And then some people just want to confirm their priors. And then I think the fact that he was injured all the way along and didn't like the pick to begin with, it's just, yep, this dude sucks. The stuff that we've heard about Jordan Morgan so far at camp has been pretty darn glowing. They're going to need him. They're going to utilize him. He's going to play early and often. I think at worst case, he's going to be in some sort of rotation. And I think he's in for a good season as a starting offensive lineman this year. They're going to need him this year for sure. I have no problem with that pick overall. It's good philosophy to take good offensive linemen, and just know, right? Like if you have a early to mid second round grade on an offensive lineman who can play tackle and a variety of positions, newsflash, that guy's going in the first round. Like that's just how offensive linemen are valued in today's NFL. So yes, I had a early to mid second round grade, but no surprise whatsoever. He went end of late, first or late first. And I think he's going to be a really good offensive lineman in Green Bay for the entirety of his career. And I think Green Bay is going to absolutely need him this upcoming season. So I know people didn't like the pick. They are pissed that he was injured last year. They now think that there's too many offensive linemen, which is the most ridiculous thing ever. And I guess ESPN doesn't like it as well. Are there other directions they maybe could have gone with that pick? Sure, probably. That's the same for every draft pick, right? But I do think he's going to have a big role on the team this year, one way or the other. Happy hour indeed. Thanks for being here, Dennis. I'm surprised that no one has asked Matt LaFleur about accountability for breaking team rules. He said a few days ago that he met with the team to discuss no contact, and it seems they kind of disregarded that. Well, Matthew, there's a reason he sat Nate Hobbs down at practice the other day. There's a reason why Rasheed Walker was running laps. There's a reason why Matt LaFleur laid into his team at the end of practice yesterday. I think to say that he's not holding people accountable would be a vast, misrepresentation of what has happened so far. He absolutely has kept players accountable when they haven't followed the rules. He's set the tone. He's reminded them of it. And when people have broke it, there have been consequences for breaking it. And I just want to, another thing I'll say here about this. We're really talking through 6 days of practice about 2 incidents. One where Nate Hobbs got low, stuck his arm out, tackled Marshawn Lloyd in the play, which was not how he got injured. We found out later. And there was nothing, nothing after the whistle. There was nothing dirty. He wasn't specifically trying to go low. I really do believe it was a bang, bang sort of happenstential play for Nate Hobbs. That was one. And the other one yesterday was the, Kingsley Enagbare and Rasheed Walker situation. We're talking about 2 pretty small moments through numerous hours of 6 days of practice so far. And here's the thing. If you don't have a couple of those moments in the first 6 days, is your team even really alive? Are they even out there? Are they even you should have a couple chippy, frustrated, angry, and borderline even stupid moments. That's just training camp in your first 6 days. Welcome to the NFL. We are back. So no, I think it's been good. I've loved overall the intensity. I think Matt LaFleur has held players accountable. And so no, I don't even know what the question would be, I guess, Matthew, of, I think we've seen it happen live and in person where Nate Hobbs got kicked out of practice for a few series and, Rasheed Walker was running laps. So I think there has been that level of accountability for sure. Not to be pessimistic, what is your most devastating Packers loss that you have experienced? We have you want to talk about the bad things today, Wesley? Unfortunately, there's too many. The Seattle one is just, incomprehensible, right? I don't think there's anything like that. I still think when people say though, if they could change the result of one game, it should not be anyone's answer unless you weren't alive at the time, but they literally lost in a Super Bowl. That's the answer. If they beat Denver, if that goes differently, they have a Super Bowl ring. Even if they beat Seattle, we don't know what would have happened in the next game. So losing to Denver as 14-point favorites in the Super Bowl stung a ton. Steve Young to Terrell Owens stung a ton. Freddie Mitchell, 4th and 26, stung a ton. The Seattle game. And then there's a billion others, right? But actually the one that might be the one that still stays with me the most outside of even all of those is the Corey Webster pick. That was the most magical season that 2010 was certainly really magical as well. 96 was amazing, but that season of the Corey Webster pick was probably the most magical season for me as a Packer fan. Love that team. That was maybe the team that I felt most just ingrained in, connected to, whatever. They were not supposed to be this big time playoff team. They had an unbelievable year, go 13-3, go down early to Seattle in that snowball game and just keep running the ball right down their throats anyway. Ryan Grant goes absolutely off in that game. And then they get New York in the NFC Championship. They get to avoid having to go to Dallas. New York's coming to them. They already beat New York earlier that year. And it's Brett Favre in Lambeau Field, NFC Championship, negative 20 degrees. Tom Coughlin's face is exploding. And it was supposed to be the fairy tale ending. It was supposed to be the Packers going on to face the Patriots, the undefeated Patriots in the Super Bowl. I think those were the undefeated Patriots, right? I could be wrong on that aspect of it, but I think it might have been. Either way, Patriots in the Super Bowl, and it was going to be Brett Favre versus Tom Brady. Everything was aligning, and to go into OT, Brett's got the ball, and to just go ultimate Brett, throw the ball right to Corey Webster when there were other options on the play. That one probably is the one that, just because I love that team so much, that might have stung the most. That are probably fourth and 26, and certainly the Bostic play as well are the three that stand out the most to me. I hope Andy didn't get pulled over. No rushing home today at all. So yeah, no rushing whatsoever. Can I get all the corner stock people are selling? You want to buy it all, Landon? Well, I'll see what I can do. Santino, thanks for being here, and appreciate the kind words. What % chance would you give Sam Brown Jr. and Will Shepherd to make the 53? Less. Will Shepherd, none. Sam Brown Jr., less than 1%. I think Sam Brown Jr. has a great chance to make the practice squad. I think Will Shepherd is probably a training camp body. I think that's probably just what he is at this point. Not willing to say like that there couldn't be, some sort of, preseason heroics or something that maybe changes that conversation up. But I would put, again, Shepherd at almost none and Sam Brown less than 1%. But Brown's off to a nice start. And I just think his upside is probably more as a practice squad player at this point. Let me rephrase that. His upside is much higher than that, but his upside for this training camp is his best opportunities to make it as a practice squad player. Andrew Mertzeg, my friend, how are you doing? Does Nazir Stackhouse have a legit chance to make the roster and contribute, or are we just getting too excited about camp buzz? Yeah, I talked a little bit about this today. What I've seen from Stackhouse so far, you're very lucky. I am not your Packers GM. If I were, I'm not cutting that guy. I've seen enough upside already to be like, I don't know what he's going to be in 2025. I don't know if he's ever going to make it as a true like starting defensive tackle or somebody that you can count on. But in a very small sample size already, I've already seen proof of concept and exactly what I need to say. We're gonna work with this guy and we're gonna develop him, and we are not subjecting him to waivers or putting him on a practice squad. So I'm already there. So I'm there with him making the team, and I think he really should. Whether he does or not, that remains to be seen. He does need to finish and have a good remainder of training camp and preseason, so that's important as well. But he's off to a great start. I do think he can have. Or has a real legitimate chance to make the 53. As far as making a, contribution and being a player this year, I think that I'm willing to take this a little bit more one step at a time. But hey, he's off to a really, really nice start. And I think there's reason to feel at least semi-optimistic that he can be one of these, undrafted free agent gems that they kind of find out of nowhere, at least as a rotational piece that can maybe help them for 10 snaps a game and not get blown off the ball. Joey, I just would not do this with Rasul. I think the starters all look great. I think Kamal Haddon is looking really good as the 4. Kalen King's had a nice start to camp. You've got Bo Melton and you've got Bo Melton and Micah Robinson fighting for spots. The secondary's been really good so far. Here's a few things on top of that. Douglas looked really, really bad last year. I know that teams have shown some interest and brought him in and stuff like that, but there's a reason Rasul Douglas does not have a team as we sit here on July 30th. The tape was ugly last year, very ugly. The next thing is you don't need a Rasul Douglas right now. What I mean by that is he's not playing. Valentine, Bullard, Nixon, and Hobbs are going to be the guys that play at corner. If they brought in Rasul Douglas today, he's just sitting on the bench. So you probably need 2 injuries to get to Rasul Douglas, and Rasul's not playing teams. So bringing him in just to not activate him and having to pay him more than anyone that you're paying on the roster right now that actually could play on teams or actually could help you right now is the better way to go anyway. You're actually probably getting more bang for your buck. Now, if we got word today that Nate Hobbs and Keyshawn Nixon are going to be out for the first half of the season and you need somebody to actually go out there and start, could you take a flyer on Rasul Douglas at this point? Sure. You could absolutely do something like that. But as the roster stands right now, I would have really no interest in bringing back Rasul at this point. The one thing I will just say quickly on top of that is if they did bring him back, We have seen Rasul revitalize his career once in Green Bay. Of course, you would have some hope that he would do it again. I really like Rasul. I think he was a great locker room fit. I think he's a good fit for Jeff Hafley's defense. There's not, there's some reasons why I could see why people want it, but again, just go watch the tape last year, and I think you'll very quickly recognize it's probably not what you want Green Bay to do at this point. Matthew says, do you think special teams woes in the playoffs the past few years may make Goody more inclined to keep specialists? Hardman as a returner, for instance, when he may otherwise be cut? Not necessarily. I think all of those, factors will go into the calculus of making that final decision. I think it has more to do with seeing guys like Adrian Cooper and Xavier McKinney and those players playing special teams, quite frankly. So I think if Hardman's going to make it, it's going to have to be as a primary punt returner. That's his avenue of making the 53. But they'll make those decisions independently and kind of weigh out everything from versatility, positional value, contract, and then special teams value certainly will play a major part in that. But for Hardman, remember too, like he's a vested vet. So you keep him on the roster for week 1, he gets guaranteed contract for the remainder of the year. If you cut him, he still gets paid everything. So those things all matter when you make those decisions as well. You just have to take all the factors in totality and ultimately try to make the best decision for your football team. Was I at the Sky Carp game? I swear I saw you on the newspaper. I was not at the Sky Carp game. So must have been some other very, very extremely handsome gentleman that happened to be at this Sky Carp game that day. But no, it unfortunately was not me. I've never been to a Sky Carp game, but always sounds like fun. All right. We left off with Joey. Let's see here. Yeah, we did that one. All right. Have you had the thought, how did they not use this guy better? Or I can't believe they let him go in regards to Simmons. The second part, no, because if you watch his tape, you can absolutely see why they just let him walk, right? That I totally get. How did they not use him better? Not necessarily there either, because both Arizona and New York tried him in all different ways. Spy, blitzer, big, safety, linebacker, special teams guy. So I don't really, see either of those things being a major issue. He's had a lot of opportunities in both Arizona and New York to kind of make a name for himself, and it just hasn't clicked. It's why I'm just pumping the brakes a little bit and saying like, hey, let's not get over our skis too far. We all get excited about new players, but the overall experience of Isaiah Simmons so far as a NFL player on film has not been great. But yeah, he's looked awesome in camp so far. Let's hope that continues. And the other thing too is, I was talking to Bill Huber, who came on the Pack-A-Day radio show, and he said like every team should take a flyer like this every single year. I'm with him. You never know when that change of scenery is going to matter. Andrew Vaughn, the Milwaukee Brewers right now, is an unbelievable example of that. What he is doing coming over from the White Sox, top prospect, gave him every opportunity in the world, AAA, majors, different stances, different everything, right? Couldn't get it figured out. They finally give up on him. He goes to the Brewers and he looks like Babe Ruth. Like sometimes that stuff just doesn't explain itself. So could Isaiah Simmons have a really big breakout year? Yes. Am I, taking it one step at a time and not getting overly hopeful? Absolutely. But yeah, I'm excited about what he's shown so far. But I don't think that New York or Arizona are going to look back and say, man, if we only tried it this way. Like, no, they tried a lot with that guy, just hasn't been able to click. But hey, if anyone can figure it out, put the right pieces together, figure out the Rubik's Cube, it's probably Jeff Hafley. And let's see if it works and let's see if it clicks. But it's been off to a great start so far. Smiling Beagle, thank you for this super chat. Who do you think makes the 53 as a receiver? That's a crazy crowded room. I think right now, and I'm not saying that this couldn't change, but I think right now this is actually pretty easy barring injury. To me, you've got 5 locks: Reed, Dobbs, Wicks, Golden, Savion. At some point, Christian will come back, and then it gets even more interesting at that point, but he's going to start the season on the PUP list. I think Malik Heath is behind the 8 ball at the moment, behind Mecole Hardman. And I think while he still has a chance, I would probably not have him on the 53 right now. To me, what this comes down to is Mecole Hardman as a punt returner. If Mecole Hardman It comes down to McCole Hardman as a punt returner and Bo Melton on if he makes the team or not. Not as a wide receiver, just in general. So if McCole Hardman makes it as the primary punt returner, he's probably just on the team. I think that probably is at end of story. He's the number 6. They'll figure out when Watson comes back and the rest later, right? I think that's probably the easiest answer. If McCole Hardman does not win the punt returner job and somehow, some way, Bo Melton is on the roster, I think they just keep 5 true wide receivers. And I think Bo Melton is just player 53, and he's going to be a core special teamer on all 4 key special teams units, has the ability to play some corner, has the ability to be your number 6 wide receiver, but also knowing that Christian's going to come back at some point and he can play that spot, or he's going to, be involved in, you probably don't need a 6th wide receiver, which could make another one expendable. So I think they're going to really try to get back in the practice squad. I think Melton can make it as a special teams wide receiver, corner extraordinaire, does a little bit, maybe extraordinaire is a bit too far, but you get my point. Like, he can do a little bit of everything. And if that's the case, he can serve as your pseudo number 6. We heard from Matt the other day. It is not out of the question, or it's not even out of the question. It's just, they're not playing him at wide receiver now, but they know what he can do at wide receiver. So he can still get back there at some point. And I could see a world in which if Hardman's not the returner, you keep 5, you keep Melton on the roster as whatever, and then he's, still serves that role as number 6 wide receiver. So that's what it comes down to for me. 5 locks, Watson back eventually. Then the easy decision matrix of, is McCole Hardman the returner? Yes, then keep. If not, is Bo Melton on the roster? If yes, then you don't need Hardman, and Melton is kind of your pseudo number 6 until Watson comes back. All right. Got through those super chats. Thank you again for those. John says, I saw a theory that the NFLPA should go heavily after Mark Murphy to fill the executive director position. Do you think you would be interested in returning to his roots with the union? Good idea. I honestly have no idea on any of that. So I hate to say that, John. I'm sure that if you can get Mark Murphy to do something like that, he will, hold it to the highest of standards. He will do things the right way. I'm sure he'd be a great hire. That would be my guess. I have no idea if he'd be interested. He might be ready to just be done working, retire, right off into the sunset, and be ready to maybe just spend more time with family, etc. So yeah, I think it would probably be a good fit, but I have no idea if he'd be interested or not. What position group would you expect Green Bay to keep in overabundance of? It's an interesting question. Here's where you could get to an overabundance at different positions. I don't think quarterback. I guess 4 would be running back, right? That might be a slight overabundance. They just keep Wilson and Brooks. That might be, 1 more than you need, but I don't know if we're going to call that an overabundance or not, but that would be how to get to 4 at running back. I don't see tight end. Wide receiver, you'd probably have to get to 7 for it to be an overabundance, which would, maybe you could argue that you have your 5 locks. And then I guess you could even just argue 5 locks. Watson comes back in week 5 and Hardman stays on the roster, which gets you to 7. Or in the meantime, Watson's on PUP. You have your 5 guys. Hardman makes it as a returner, and you keep Bo Melton, and he's kind of still a receiver. Like, that's maybe 7. That would probably how you get there at wide receiver. Again, don't think you get there at tight end. I don't think you would get to an overabundance at offensive line. The most you would keep is 10, and I don't think I would put that in the overabundance category. Defensive end, I think you could keep 6. If you don't see enough from Oliver yet, but you're certainly not going to cut him. You've got the 2 rookies, LVN and Gary. You could still keep Enigbari in that situation, and then Brenton Cox as well. So I think you could get to 6 defensive ends. I think you could get to 6 defensive tackles. So you've got your Brooks, Wooden, Wyatt, Clark, and then Brinson and Stackhouse being your 6. I think you could get there that way. I think you could get to 6 linebackers by keeping Christian Welch, who's probably a core special teamer for this group. I think you could easily get to 6 corners. I don't think you could get to 7, but maybe not entirely out of the situation. And then you're an Omar Brown away, who's had a really nice start to camp, of maybe even keeping 6 safeties. So I think there's different versions where you could get to different ones of those, but none of them are like a crazy overabundance in any way that I could maybe see there. Maybe again, defensive end at 6, but they did that last year. So it's definitely within the realm of possibility. Green Ranger, hello to you as well. Go Pack Go, and appreciate that. Definitely hit that like button. Do we have a chance at keeping Hafley after this year? Yes and no. So what I mean by that is, assuming that they don't have a terrible defense this year, he's going to get head coaching opportunities. If he gets a good head coaching job, Green Bay doesn't have a chance at keeping Hafley, right? He's just going to go. He's going to take a really great head coaching job if he gets offered it. So it has less to do, I think, with anything that Green Bay does. They're not going to lose him as a defensive coordinator to another defensive coordinator job. It's just, does he get a head coaching job somewhere? And if so, they're just going to lose him. And they're assuming it's the right head coaching job. So I think he absolutely could stay if he doesn't get a head coaching, or he will stay if he doesn't get a head coaching job. But if he gets offered a good one, he probably should go. And I wouldn't blame him for doing so. I'm really intrigued by how much Barron Sorrell contributes, considering Enigbari is seemingly having a quiet camp so far. Do you think Barron can take the most second string edge snaps? I think him and Brenton Cox and Enigbari could all be in that conversation if Enigbari makes it, that is, or if any of those guys. I mean, I guess Cox or Enigbari make it, but I think that would be the battle right now for who's kind of that number 3 and 4 guy. And I think that would come down to Enigbari, Barron Sorrell, and then Brenton Cox as well, all very much in that conversation. This week is awesome. Hall of Fame game, practice, and family night. Feels good. Feels very, very good, Dave. I'm right there with you. Where would you rank Brandon McManus among kickers in the league? I honestly have no idea, J Money. I have certainly not gone and watched any all 22 of kicking tape, and I don't even know if I would know what to do with it if I did. All I know is I'm very happy that Brandon McManus, from a on the field standpoint, is a Green Bay Packer, and he's literally been perfect so far. He's been the best player in training camp. It's hard to mess with perfection. And I have a huge faith that when he goes out to make a kick, that he's going to go out and make it. So I don't know if he's 1 or 18 or anything in between, but he's a really damn good kicker. And I'm glad that, again, Green Bay has him out there kicking field goals. One of my goats for Packers content, can't stop thinking about week 1. Think we could see AB gap blitz pressure with the Lions' young interior offensive line? Yeah, we'll see a ton of it. A ton is maybe a little bit over aggressive as well, but I do think we'll see a lot of double A gap pressures from the Green Bay Packers, at least signs of it. Whether they actually bring it or drop off, that's another story altogether. But I do think we're going to see some of that this year as early as week 1 from Green Bay. Good afternoon to you as well, Daryl. Thanks for being here. Am I buying the Brewers hype? Absolutely. They'll break our hearts probably again at the end. But no, I do think that this team is special. I do think they've got the opportunity to make a real solid run at this thing. They've got the pitching. I think they're going to need everyone healthy. I think, Yelich, Contreras, Churio, like your core guys are going to have to be playing at near their best come playoff time if they really want to make a special run at this thing. But their pitching is legit. Their defense is legit. Their speed is legit. And the bats have come a long way. See if they do anything in the next 24 hours or so to buoy the lineup even more. But I do think they're a very good team, and I am definitely buying the hype. There's a long way to go, but let's say Nazir keeps up his production through camp. Wyatt can't find a way to take more snaps on the field. Could we see Nazir start carving a more meaningful role? I'm not willing to put him in that number 1 line conversation. Let's see what he does even more, even just in the number 2 lines first before we get there. But I do think he could easily find a way to carve a role, like a rotational role, like a TJ Slayton-esque role for himself, 15, 18 snaps per game. That's absolutely out there within his ability to go reach. So I hope he goes and reaches it, and I hope he plays great. But again, let's take it one step at a time. Let's have him make the roster first. Once he makes a roster, let's get him active for game day. Once he's active for game day, let's see, him actually go out there and play. And once he's out there and playing, let's see if he can actually make an impact. But the initial reactions are great, but one step at a time. How has Jordan Love been looking in camp? I would say veteran and good. I wouldn't necessarily put it in like the great category. Certainly not bad. Certainly not average. I would say good to really good is somewhere in that range. And what I will add on top of that is some really impressive stuff, great control of the offense. And again, nothing, the one throw to Tyron Hopper was probably the one that he'd really like to have back. Other than that, like nothing egregious. I think the accuracy's mostly been good, although I think the deep ball can be still a little bit back, something he can continue to work on. And what I was going to say though is I think the lack of big time like quarterback production has less to do with Jordan at the moment and more to do with just everyone on offense kind of getting on the same page, working with some new players, and just first 5-6 days of training camp, right? There's always that feeling out portion, and defense is always ahead of offense. So I think he's doing a really nice job. I would certainly have zero concerns about Jordan at the moment, but I'd put it in the really good category through 6 days so far and would expect it to only get better from here on out. Let's see. Salute and good afternoon, fellow Packers fans. Thanks for being here, Daryl. Best seats at Lambeau are the ones that you're sitting in. It's not a bad seat in that house. I love my tickets that I have, the season tickets that I have. North end zone. I'm a nerd, so it feels like I have end zone view. Like I get to, like I'm lined up right behind the quarterback. So I've got to line up right behind, Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre, Steve Young, Jordan Love, Peyton Manning. Like I've got Tom Brady. I've got to see exactly what they're seeing on the field. So I'm right up there in the north end zone, about 35 rows up. And it's to me, it's a perfect view, but I've been all around that stadium. I think the biggest misconceptions is you would think, right, the lower you are, like the better seats that it is. And a lot of times it works that way from a price point standpoint. It's not really that way. You actually do, in my opinion, want some height so you can see things better. And sometimes too, you got to be careful of like obstructed views. I sat one time where like half the field was obstructed by the goalposts. So you do have to be a little bit cognizant of that. But other than that, I do think that I love my end zone seats, again, like 35 rows up, and get that full, like almost not all 22, but the all 22 end zone cam experience by sitting up there. Been a fan for years, and I should know better not to get overly hyped the way that I did going into last year. Approach this year with more cautious optimism, which is getting harder with Golden out there, making plays and envisioning him alongside someone like a Christian Watson and what that deep threat could potentially look like. Like part of the fun of being a fan is sometimes being unrealistic and getting your hopes up. The only thing that I would caution is, don't then get mad at and I'm not saying you do this, R. Smith, but don't get mad at the team for not living up to your expectations when you were the one that overhyped your own expectations, right? That's the one thing that you have to be a little bit careful of. If you're like, yeah, this team's going 19-0 and winning the Super Bowl, and then you're upset because, they lost in week 5 and they're 4-1 and they no longer can go undefeated. Well, you set the unrealistic expectation in the first place, right? So that's the only thing I would caution against. But my man, be my guest. Go out, be exuberant, be a fan, like have fun with it. Be as optimistic and as overly hyped as you want to be. But just know there can be sometimes a come down after that if they don't live up to those very hefty expectations. Southeast corner, end zone by the tunnel, and end zone. Again, no bad seats in that house. Watch the KC game from there. Best one yet for me. That was a very fun game. Hey, Andy, love the show. Appreciate that, Jaden. You mentioned player grades throughout the offseason. How do you grade players? So I guess I want to be clear. I don't grade anything. I don't grade like practice stuff or anything like that, to be very clear. I'm not out there at practice grading players in any place. So if that's what you mean by offseason, I don't do any of that. The only grading that I do in the offseason is when they go out and sign Josh Jacobs, Isaiah Simmons, McCole Hardman, and Aaron Banks. I did go back and grade their entire film from 2024. So I did do that. And then for my grading, I graded every play. I grade every player and every play throughout the course of the season. So when I'm talking about grades, it's usually my grades from this past year, but I've done that since 2017 and have just years and years of grades at this point. So that's usually what I'm talking about. But just to clarify, I'm not grading anything at practice or training camp or anything like that. Did we end up learning anything more about the Romeo Doubs situation last season? I always see non-Packers fans talking about him as being toxic, but I thought we knew it was a mental health related. I believe that the story is that he was upset with his role within the offense to some real capacity. And I just think whether it was part of a mental health thing or not, he didn't deal with it the right way. I don't think it was that he was upset with his role. I think it was how he kind of handled it. And I think there were times where Green Bay was struggling to get a hold of him and there was a whole thing. But the clear thing here is a suspension like that is a tool in your toolbox to try to get things back trending in the right direction. So they used that suspension. It worked. It really worked. And I think that it got the point across to Romeo Doubs. Everything from that relationship between the Packers and Dobbs has been apparently unbelievable from there on out. And I don't think it's anything that anyone, even regardless of what it was, needs to worry about anymore. Dobbs seems to be in a great headspace when it comes to, the season and the Packers and what his role is on the team. I don't think you're going to experience anything like that anymore from Romeo Doubs. And I think he's in for a good season. I think he looks in great shape. He looks really good so far. So I wouldn't either, whatever it was, I wouldn't worry about it too much going forward. What would you grade each of our draft picks based on what you've seen in camp? Golden would be a B+. Belton, incomplete, just because I haven't seen him, not because of any other reason at this point. I just haven't got to see much of him. Savion Williams, like a solid B, maybe a B-, but not minus as a negative connotation. I don't mean it that way, but just some of the injuries have given him maybe a little bit less opportunity. So maybe a B-. Baron Sorrell, probably a B, maybe a B+. Colin Oliver, incomplete. Brinson, incomplete. Micah Robinson, maybe like a C+, and John Williams, an incomplete. So not a ton of super fun draft class to grade right now, just because there's been a lot of injuries out there. But Matthew Golden's been really fun so far. You cannot continue letting your blue chip players go, and now maybe Elgton, and think you're going to be a super contender. Well, Menace, Micah Hyde. Okay. Micah Hyde left Green Bay in 2016. We are in 2025. We're going to have to get over that one at this point. Casey Hayward left the team in 2015. We are in 2025. That was a decade ago. We're going to have to get over that one. Corey Linsley had what? Corey Linsley played for 2 more years. He had the really good year in 2021. 2022, he was solid. 2023, he was basically out of the league. So they probably should have kept him for 1 more year. But I would say that contract that the Chargers gave him did not come to fruition in totality. And had Green Bay given him a 4 or 5 year deal to extend him, probably would not have been the right thing to do in that situation. Jair Alexander was unequivocally the right move in that situation based on the contract, and is nowhere near played like a blue chip player these last couple seasons. Also should mention that Hyde and Hayward did not play like blue chip players before they left Green Bay. It was a bad evaluation. They should have kept both players, but both played way better when they went to other teams and were not in that blue chip player conversation when they left Green Bay. Casey Hayward's even basically penned an essay on social media saying as such that he doesn't even blame Green Bay because he was nowhere near as good in Green Bay as he ended up being in future seasons. Elgton Jenkins is still on the team. Aaron Jones, they replaced with a better running back in Josh Jacobs. Aaron Rodgers was unequivocally the right decision to go with Jordan Love over that situation. So to recap, they should have kept Hyde, but that was a decade ago. They should have kept Hayward. That was a decade ago. Brian Gutekunst wasn't even GM for either of those decisions. Corey Linsley, arguable, probably the right move. Could understand if they would have kept him for a little bit longer, but the contract probably would not have paid off if you gave him that big deal at that point in time. Ja, the right move. Rodgers, the right move. Jones, the right move. Devontae's the more interesting one. We could have that conversation. Devontae, in and of himself, has not been able to be that difference maker with the Raiders or with the Jets. We'll see if he can do it with the Rams. I love Devontae, but I can also understand that the window that they had open at that point in time, paying him that contract, plus losing out on a first and second round pick by keeping him, it was probably not the right move to pay, plus lose out on a first and second round pick to keep him in Green Bay when your roster was starting to get to the point where you were going to probably have to do a rebuild. So I don't disagree with that decision either. So blue chip, I think, is doing a lot of heavy lifting when Rodgers, even at that point, was no longer playing at a blue chip level and has not played at a blue chip level since leaving Green Bay. And Elgton, again, is still on the team. Also would probably argue not at a blue chip level over the course of the past few seasons. So I disagree with the premise overall. I do think that you have to make, you have to find ways to get blue chip players onto the team, but they did sign Josh Jacobs. Xavier McKinney. I do think they have plenty of players that are up and coming to be able to get to that level, but that's the next step for this team is guys like Jordan Love, Edgerrin Cooper, Evan Williams, I can put in that conversation. Somebody along the defensive line, hopefully. Zach Tom. Like there's a lot of people that need to take that next step into being a really great player to becoming a, Pro Bowl / All-Pro level player. So they need to find a couple more of those or have a couple of those develop. But most of those decisions, at least at the time, or at least, kind of going back and look at it, I can understand, if not many of them actually even being the right move. Where would you place Golden on kick returner and punt returner depth chart? I think he's pretty far back on kick returner. I bet Nixon, Lloyd, if he's healthy, I don't know if you're ever going to just even risk putting him back there at this point. But let's say the injuries weren't an issue. Nixon, Lloyd, Savion Williams, I think would potentially be out there ahead of him. Hardman, I think there's quite a few in front of him on kick returner. Punt returner, it's probably Hardman, Reed, Nixon in some order, and then maybe Golden as 4. I don't think he'll be out there in kick return at all. I think it would probably take something to get him out there at punt return. Again, probably like the 4th or 5th guy on the punt return depth chart. All right. I do got to get out of here in about 5 minutes, guys, just as a heads up. I know we only got to about 4:10 in the questions, and we now are at 4:56. I love this time of year because usually I'm able to get through all of the questions, and I didn't even make it through like the first 10 minutes of questions. Not to beat a dead horse, but I have read best indicator of future injuries is past injuries. Flexibility and compensating for past injuries could be factors. That part I absolutely agree with. That's why you need to make sure that players are healed and that they're taking that time to recover from injuries so that they don't have those extenuating injuries, that it gets healed properly, and that you're not overcompensating for the injury when they come back. Hey, Andy, where do the Packers players stay during camp? Silly random thought just popped into my head. I think they stay at the hotel across. Actually, that might be a game day thing. I honestly don't know. I know it used to be the dorms in St. Norbert. I know they don't do that anymore. So it might just be that they're on their own. I don't know. It's one of those things I guess I just really don't care about. So I think there's some time that they spend in the hotel together during camp, and maybe that actual camp portion, that is the case. I don't quote me on it one way or the other. That's one I probably need to look into, but I'm just not sure on it off the top of my head. Stackhouse is too good of a name to not make the team. Yeah, Jerry Stackhouse never quite lived up to expectations, though. But no, I do like the name Stackhouse for sure. Has Christian Watson participated, or is he observing? He's on the PUP list, so he can do some running to the side and work with trainers, but certainly cannot do any participating. And Brian Gutekunst has already said he will not be activated and or practice at any point in time during training camp. Do you think Barron Sorrell can have the Rashawn Gary Pro Bowl type impact in the next few years if he reaches his peak? Yes. I'm not saying it'll happen, but I think he has that ability. Any big plays from Christian Welch this camp? Feel like he was last year's darling and haven't heard much or seen much from him. No big plays. I was mentioning this the other day with Edgerrin Cooper, though. Like at linebacker, your job is tackling for the most part. You might end up with an interception here or there, or a sack here or there, but like your big plays are going to be made on hits, tackles behind the line of scrimmage, and just racking up 150 tackles. And there's no tackling for a lot of those guys in camp. So tough to make a huge impact in camp at linebacker. I think Hopper, Simmons, Cooper are already off to great starts, but no, I have not seen a ton from Welch up until this point. The super chat was for a beer. Have one on me. You do good work for the out-of-towners who can't see it for themselves. I appreciate that. I will be out of town myself in Eagle River this upcoming weekend and absolutely have that beverage. So I appreciate that, R.R. Smith. Probably more than one. Where would you rank this offensive line going into the season among our offensive lines in the past? My dad, who's been a Packers fan for over 40 years, says it's the most athletic he's seen. That is probably true, but we're still at best third because the groups of Clifton, Wall, Flanagan, Rivera, Tauscher is top of the line to me. And then Bakhtiari, Sitton, Lindsley, Lang, Bulaga is right there next to it. So those two are pretty untouchable for me overall. But then I think it's probably the third best following those two iterations of the offensive line. 40 years, you might get into some of those Super Bowl team offensive lines that's probably competing with this as well. But I think this has the ability to be the third best offensive line during that time period. Keep doing a great job, Andy. Your content gets me through my work week. The live reactions have me sounding like a guru to the guys at work. Much appreciated. That's awesome. I appreciate that a ton. I always hear about these competitions at positions, but when does the competition end? Has Rashid not earned his left tackle spot? Will LVN keep his spot opposite of Gary, even if someone else looks better? No, if somebody's better, they're going to play. They're going to rotate at defensive ends no matter what. And no, competition's always taking place all throughout the season. You got to keep proving it. And I think you're probably going to see, I think Rasheed Walker and Jordan Morgan maybe have a rotation at left tackle of some, sort throughout the season. But no, competition never really ends until you're just one of those undeniables. Zach Tom's got the starting spot, right? Jordan Love's got the starting spot. There are Xavier McKinney going to start some games this year. Until you get to that level of player, you are competing for everything at all times. And even then, like, you let your foot off the gas and people will catch up to you very quick. But no, those players are definitely going to continue to compete. Justice, good to see you. I just literally got off of recording with Justice right before we got on. What was your favorite memory of the Bugs Brown era? Great question. I literally do not think I saw one play from Bugs Brown in OTA, minicamp, or training camp. I guarantee that I have not. I did not watch a Bugs Brown rep through the entire time. That is probably my mistake. And now I'm kind of sad because I'll never get to see one. Hey, Andy, just wanted to say, appreciate what you do. At this point, you are a crucial part of my Packer season experience. Keep it going, brother. Appreciate that, oil man. What was the, there will be blood? I'm an oil man. I still have that in my head for some reasons. What kind of packages do you think Hafley could put together for Oliver this year? Who do you think would complement him on the field for him to succeed more than not? I think they can use him in a variety of different ways, but I think the primary way once he gets back is going to truly try him out as a speed rusher and just get him out there in obvious passing downs as kind of like a change of pace type player would be my guess. So that would be my initial thought, but I do think are going to be some fun ways to potentially utilize him. All right. My apologies. I would love to get to all of these remaining questions, but I do have to get out of here. Do have some kid duties coming up here in just a moment. So my apologies for that, but I will be back tomorrow immediately following practice. That's probably going to be a shorter one, probably 30 minutes, maybe 45 at the most, but probably a 30-minute chat tomorrow. But I will be back for that. I'll do a full review of tomorrow's practice. I'm today I already recorded with Justice for tomorrow's show. Paul Brettel and Ross Uglum are going to have you covered for Saturday's episode, or at least Paul will have you covered for post-practice on Friday, Ross on Saturday's episode. And then I'll be back for family night. Following family night, I'll potentially do a live show after family night. Not sure on that yet, but we'll for sure have the full breakdown after it's done. And then we'll be back to normal routine after that. Appreciate you guys being here. Thank you for all the support. I will see you guys all very soon. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.